fuck off, will you? Fresh, yeah?
Shut the fuck up!
Let's ease on down the road.
Episode 18. I'm Sparky, Mr. Dean Scurry.
We're here in Magic Hill and we have Mr. Stephen Magee as our guest.
Hello boys, you're very welcome to the house. My name is Stephen Magee.
Thanks for inviting us here. I used to come up here in my 20s. I worked in a U project in Donamead and it was heavy tack, like, you know. It was kind of pre-abuse scandals and all that kind of stuff, like, you know what I mean? And there was a lot of...
Days of innocence.
Donamead at the time would have been seen as a kind of a nearly middle class area, like, you know what I mean? But there was a big need for a U project there, and I went in and set up a U project. There were great people, you know, with the church and with the local politicians and stuff like that. And we set up a great, it's still there, the U project, but there was a very heavy wax situation going on at the time. And one of the board members said to me, I'm going up to my mate up in Dundalk, up in Kilcurry. And he says, come up. And it was in the middle of October. And I had never really been in the countryside. Like, you know, I'd never spent a night in the countryside. And we went up and it was in a little cottage up in Kilcurry. And I just started hanging around up here. I started driving up. I had a little post office van. Dean probably remember it. I had this little orange post office van. And I was the old road. And what I was thinking was when I was coming up on the new road is that, you know, it's just a different pace. Like, you know what I mean? So when I was driving up, then it would have been about 2 hours, you know, to get up. It was a different pace, and if there might have been traffic in Drogheda or something like that, and it was a whole different. I remember coming up one time on a bus, and somebody said, "Don't get on that bus. That's the slow bus." What happened was, if we had waited around for the fast bus, we would have been late. So we said, "We'll get the slow bus." No, it was amazing because the bus driver was playing country music. That old thatched cottage up in there the hills, and he stopped everywhere. They were handing off parcels to people and all that kind of stuff, and it was absolutely, I know it probably sounds like,
do you miss them days, do you?
No, those days are still, those things still happen, like, I mean, there's still stuff like that happens. Like, you guys were talking about the local shop there, you know. The shop is a chemist, it's a shop, it's a garage, it does everything.
Yeah,
fuel,
it's the post office, yeah, it's the fuel depot,
it's everything, you know. And I think in areas like this, people do look out for each other.
I never seen up this part of the country before. I'm only up here 2 years now, but I've seen all over Ireland, and this last bit now, coming into Louth, coming into Northern Ireland, is fucking fabulous. Absolutely stunning. I
would have been up here. One of the guys I hung around with was into organic market gardening, like, you know, that he was trying to get into that now. He's a publican now, but he rented land off that guy you were talking about earlier that does the farming here, you know?
All right.
So he rented land off him, and it was an old farm with an old gutted house in the middle of an old, right? So there was it was a German guy who hung around with us, and he moved into that house, and there was no windows in it, and he moved into it, and he put windows in it, and he fixed it all up, and he's stayed here. He's still around this area. So I would have come up here a bit. I remember that, you know, at the time there was a big drought that summer, and they had to run a huge big pipe down the hill and into the river and suck water up onto the farm, like, and they grew organic vegetables, and they sold it in the, you know, a box scheme where you got a box of vegetables at your door, you know, at your gaff once a week for a certain price, and it was deadly, you know. So I would have been around this area a lot, and you're right, you know, going into the north there, all that area into South Armagh, it's beautiful, you know, and it's not talked about.
The history of the place is unreal. Like, there's a place down here called Magee Island, and there's nothing on it. There's not a shop. It's just a peninsula called Magee Island. There's nothing on it. There's not even a landmark there. Down the road, there's a place called Templetown, and it was the first hostel for the Templars, Knights Templars, in the world. Can you believe that? Yeah.
Well, that's amazing.
So this whole area is called Templetown. Then beyond that is Jamestown. There's holy wells around the place. So Bridges is across the road.
So you have Bridges, and then you had Mount Oliver. I don't know what it's used for now, but
it's still a convent. I think it's still a retirement convent.
So this whole area, like, would have had a lot of, you know, as you say, holy wells. So going back pre-Christianity, it was an important place, like, you know what I mean? And I think a lot of myths and legends, you know, Fionn McCool stood up in the hill here.
That's right, yeah, and they were fought over. This is where all the battlegrounds for Untain.
Yeah,
to battle over the bulls.
That's right.
That's all this area.
I think it's a savage area, like.
And we're on Magic Hill,
in the parish of Ravensdale.
On the Cooley Peninsula. And I've walked the hills. My God.
Did you do any roaring then? Were you up there screaming or anything?
Yeah, I did. A couple of weeks ago, I was quite sad, and I went. I hung out in the house on my own for a couple of days. Got into my hammock. I can go swimming here in Giles's Quay, and I can go up the hills to listen to the silence and scream me head off.
Well, I tell you my Giles's Quay story. So I went down to Giles's Quay one day with my mate's ma, you know, and I was getting into the water, and somebody warned me that there was a bad current there, you know. But I got in anyhow. I got in because I was being me, young and
off the beach or off the quay.
Off the quay.
Yeah.
So there's a bit of a current there, or as me dad would say, a current. I got into the water, and somebody said to me, "Be careful," you know, and I wasn't careful, and I swam out, and the current took me, you know. I was pre-drowning, you know what I mean. I was I got a fright, like, you know what I mean. I got a bad fright. I was in the water, but I seen a man up on a cliff, up on a height, and he was beckoning me towards him, you know. And when I started to swim towards him, the tide. Now Giles's Quay was behind me.
You were looking up into the hills.
I was looking up towards. This guy was beckoning me to swim this way. He was saying, "Swim this way, swim this way," and I swam and I went straight to him. But I climbed up onto the rocks, and people were shouting at me, "What are you doing?" But I climbed up onto the rocks and I walked around. Now, I didn't show down, but I was crying, and I cried walking along. And then I climbed up onto the road, and I walked around. And my mate's ma was there, and she was like, "Are you all right?" And I said, "No, I got it off for free." And I was like, she said, "Why did you swim over there?" And I said, "There was a fella over there calling me over." And they were looking at each other, and they were like, "There was no fella up." And I said, "There was." I said, "There was a fella beckoning me over, you know." Yeah, it was.
Was it an actual person, or was it a vision?
It was a vision.
So these hills are full of those things.
No, well, I think my ma would have had those things as well. I remember somebody passed away in the family, and my ma woke up and she heard her mother knocking at the door, you know, calling her, and her mother was long dead, like, you know. Yeah, I think there's little openings there, like, you know what I mean. I don't think it was me time, and there was somebody said, no, come on, swim over this way.
Well, I've been walking up the hills, and it's Samhain. It's mushroom season, and I've been just listening to the hills, feeling the rain, the wind, picking mushrooms for Stephen and for me mammy.
Looking at the stars.
So we're very privileged up here. The pace of life is whatever the pace of the rain or the wind is.
Yeah.
It's stunning.
Or whatever drama you bring into the house.
Whatever bullshit you bring in.
Yeah.
So I'm up here about a year, not even a year yet. Up a Magic Hill with Stephen. Stephen's been here about 2 years.
Yeah, 2 years, yeah.
What got you up here?
Work, as you know, I was living with you in Portmarnock. To drive home from Portmarnock from work at the airport, it usually takes, if there's no traffic, it takes you 15 minutes. But if there's traffic, it takes about an hour. Driving home from work from here is an hour. So it doesn't make any difference. Still sitting in traffic, but up here is absolutely beautiful. Just come up and get away from the madness of it all. I can't stand the drama in Dublin. Right. I can't stand the smell of it anymore. We were living in Portmarnock, but every 5 minutes there was a train going by the window or there was an airplane going overhead. And I was just sitting there going, "No, please stop."
And we were living in a quiet part.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it was, I think for Stephen, it was too manicured. It was like middle class, gated community living.
Yeah. It was beautiful though, because during COVID, the start of COVID, there was 3 cherry trees that were coming into blossom, and I just sat under them for the whole of COVID, just looking at leaves growing and flowers falling.
So we got to hang out with each other for the whole of COVID. I was staying in my ma's. So there was an extra room there, and I put it up online, and a couple of people came to look at it, and then Stephen knocked on the door one day, and he was kind of, I think your opening statement was, "I know you'll probably give it to somebody else, and I know I probably can't afford it. Can I just see the room?" And I brought him in to see the room, put on the kettle, and that was it.
Yeah.
You're in.
And for about 2 years, we just...
I remember meeting Stephen, and just, it was like as if we were in the same currach, you know. We were all, it just, there was no introductions needed. There was no, who was he, or what does he do, or anything like that. There was none of that. Like, it was just...
Is that an age thing, though? Is it because we're of the same age, or because we're both dubs? Is it? I think that...
No, this was more. Now, this was different because I meet people all the time, like, you know, and you know, and I've met loads of people through Dean and that I wouldn't have that connection with, like, you know what I mean? So it was, there's definitely something, you know, there was definitely, I think, you're right, you know, we're the same age, we're dubs, we're into the same kind of stuff, like, you know what I mean? You know, we were sea swimming, we were talking very deeply and all that kind of stuff, like, you know what I mean? So
so I have a bit of umbrage to pick between the two of you, and this is the only reason I'm going to give, or the only thing I'm going to give out to you about. It's not all about Ballymun.
Where
exactly
are you
where
from?
York Street.
Right. Are you from York Street Flats?
Yeah, from the flats, yeah. My ma's from Mercer House Flats, my dad's from Oliver Bond Flats. All flats on the south side. Do you know all the troubles that you're having in Ballymun, or you've had in Ballymun and went through? That happens all over the country.
Yeah. I don't think when we're talking, I think when we're talking, we're always talking from our experience. I've worked all over the city. I've done outreach in North Inner City. I've worked in Darndale, Prorswood, Donamead, Kilbarrack. You know, so my experience is all those communities, like, you know what I mean? I've never worked on the south side. I was on placement once on the south side in Bluebell. I'll tell you a funny story, right? I was slagging my cousin one day. You know, me and my dad were chatting. My dad and my cousin are close. He said to me, he hadn't seen him, you know. Now, my cousin's big into the music, into the punk music, and, you know, Billy Bragg and, you know, going to gigs and all that, you know. You know, my dad was saying something about him, and I said to him, he's a weirdo, he is. He's a south sider, you know. Then, and my dad says, oh, I'm a south sider. I said, see, I told you.
I don't know what that is, though, north side, south side, because it's only a Liffey in the way.
Well, what Kitty says is it's not really north side, south side anymore. It's west side, east side.
Back in the 70s and 80s, we used to think that the divide was the Liffey.
But it was postally, wasn't it? I mean, everything on the north side is odd numbers. Everything on the south side is even numbers.
Yeah, but we used to, living on the north side, growing up in Ballymun or in Coolock in the 70s and 80s in Dublin, we literally thought the south side was the other side of the world. We kind of distinguished the inner city as a different thing. So you're an inner city. You're a townie. Yeah. So there would have been townies, then there would have been posh fuckers on the south side. We didn't really know any posh fuckers on the north side because you only occasionally went to Hout. Clontarf, no, yeah.
We didn't really hang with them.
Malahide boys, you just can't. Malahide is posh.
I think the first time I seen Malahide was when I was 30.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we wouldn't have ventured there. What were you going to Malahide for? If you had the money to go towards the coast, it was to Hout. You know what I mean?
Dollymount or something like that.
That's where the cliffs were, or that's where the sea was, or something like that. The divide now, the economic divide, is east and west, as in all the big fancy houses are on the coast. And then inside from that, you have Coolock, Ballymun, Finglas, Darndale.
Right, this is just an off-the-wall question. What do you think is going to happen to the city centres? Like, of all cities. They're just tearing them apart and putting up hotels everywhere. All the communities are going to be ripped out.
You'd ask me, Sheriff. So I was down to Dockstage the other day, went out with my sister's birthday, and we went to a restaurant. I said to me, Dad, what was this building when you were a young fella? He said this was like the CIE headquarters or something like that. But nothing remained other than the facade of this one building for the whole area where he grew up.
All right,
it was all just
that's the building you can see from the south side across, the red brick building.
Yeah, we were in there. There's a restaurant in there, there's a bar in there. So we were in there. It was one of those €50 steak places. It was really, really good value. We had a great time, but it was just, we were looking out the window. We were on a rooftop looking out, and every inch of it was concrete and glass and changed and different.
There's a big sign saying, welcome to your 15-minute city.
So I was explaining that to my dad, a 15-minute city, and that Dublin is the first European city to be designated as a 15-minute city.
What's a 15-minute city?
So 15-minute city is everything that you
want, desire.
Needs, desire, work, rest, play, family is within a 15-minute area.
I used to talk the way you talk, right, about, do you remember this? And do you remember there used to be a train station over there? And remember there used to be...
You always talk, do you remember? Do you remember?
We're not talking about remembering, we're talking about the future.
You were saying about what did this used to be, and the reality is that everything moves forward. Like, if everything didn't move forward, well, the inner city would be fields. What was before the financial services centre? There was the docks. What was there before that? There was like a river with river banks. What was there before that? You know what I mean? So
churches, schools,
churches, and right.
Schools,
but all those
Viking
things, like,
settlements.
But those people that were in there and built them are all dead, and they moved. You know, things moved, and you know, people wanted, you know, other things, technology. you know, people go on about, there's no cash being used anymore. It's just technology, you know. And before there was cash, there was bartering. You were bartering with somebody for sticks.
I prefer that way of getting stuff.
And that's nice, and it's a nice thing. I'm not saying, but the reality is that like this thing that we're doing now wasn't feasible in the 60s. You would have had to go into a studio. You would have had to be part of a corporation to be able to produce a broadcast. Sure, we're doing it now. You could do this on a phone with 3 microphones.
So is this your second punk rocker phase?
DIY, I always talk about it. And I was even talking to somebody the other day about music, and they were talking about that they wanted to make it in music and, you know, have it as a career and stuff like that. And I was saying to them, that's not really possible now. One of the young people came into the club the other day and he was playing me his new track, you know, and it was savage. It was this amazing track. And he said, I made that in the kitchen the other night, right? And I was thinking how amazing that was, right? There was some singer was going to play, or I think it was Canada was inviting this singer, I don't know who it is, Taylor Swift or something like that, up to play concerts in their cities because it increases the GDP.
Money.
So I think there will always be, you know, the Taylor Swifts and all that kind of stuff where people will go to big concerts and all that kind of stuff. You know, but there'll always be the other thing, which is the DIY thing, where young people will make music or they will busk or they will do what, you know, that kind of stuff. Yeah, but
I think this is your DIY. This is your second phase of punk. Lovely.
We're leaning into it, all right, yeah.
And you're listening to it, Steve.
I like the podcast. I like the way it's, I like its tempo. I like the one with Martin because there's an awful lot to be searched there, like. I'm mad jealous of the Travellers. Mad jealous of them. I always thought they got away with murder.
Oh, literally, yeah. They wrote their own rule book.
Yeah.
And then gave out about it.
Yeah. And I think the thing now is that they're getting more settled than us. And we're realising that we are just one people of a certain, right, I hate to say it, but class. We're all that working class. And we're realising now that they've held us down a bit too long, I think.
Who's they?
Governments. Not giving us a speech. I mean, who's in charge at the moment? Are they the ones that we elected in charge?
The dude who arrived here a couple of months ago, he seems like he was in charge with his €1 trillion bleeding war handshakes the other day. Biden.
Oh.
As you said, right, that's the agreement, right, that we agree. So you agree that there is a day, right? You've accepted that there's a day. Oh, they don't give us this and they do this. So you accept that there's an other group of people that you are not as important as them because they make the rules or something like that, right? And once you accept that agreement, well, then you're going to just play your role as a kind of a subservient today. If you agree to that, we were talking about this in maybe the last podcast about the agreements that we make subconsciously, the agreements that we make that are given to us as children, you know what I mean? Like you agree that you have to go to school and you have to get an education and you have to make a confirmation and you're, you know, all that kind of stuff.
Wash behind your ears, get a haircut, don't be cheeky to your ma.
Yeah, all that stuff, right? And then when anybody strays outside of that, they're hippies or they're weirdos or
outlaws.
Whatever. Outlaws
yeah.
or whatever. And then there's the other thing that you said that you were jealous about. When Travellers, you know, behaved outside of that, they were seen as others or they were seen as, it was a negative thing, you know, they were called something negative. You know, even you saying that thing, you know, that you were jealous of Travellers. I think what you're probably jealous of, and I don't know, I'm just, we all want to break out of this thing, you know, like.
I tell you what I'm jealous of. They seem, Travellers to me seem to be a lot freer than we were.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But because they don't accept them. They don't accept they. They don't accept that. Because they have.
As Tommy Tiernan say, do you want to ride a horse or go to school? Do you know?
And I know loads of young people who fly around and rob scramblers, you know. To me, like, I'm saying that is wrong, okay? But to them, this is freedom, like, you know. So I get what you're talking about. I understand, you know, wanting to kind of break out of the norm or whatever it is and do. Some people go on holidays to Tenerife. They go to the same place. It wasn't the same as last year, you know. The people who were next door were lovely last year, you know, and they expect the kind of same thing all the time and don't break out of.
So, yeah, but a lot of people are comfortable being in familiar surroundings, aren't they?
Some are. And then there's other people, like I was talking to a guy the other day and he was telling me that his parents were middle-class bohemians, right? This was before rock and roll, you know, because he's an older guy and his parents were into art. When he started wandering, the first place he went to was Afghanistan. And he just had heard his parents talking about Afghanistan, and they had been there, you know. And we went overland through France and all he travelled overland to Afghanistan. But he was saying he's still like that now. He's still like I was saying to him, where are you off to on holiday? To the place he said wasn't Turkey, right? That's, when he said the name of the place, I was in, where's that? And he goes, well, it's in what people call Turkey, So the people who live in this place don't accept
Turkish rule
or whatever like that, you know what I mean? And so he says when he went there, the people there were very free. And I think there has to be a certain amount of acceptance. Like, I drove up on the motorway there, that motorway wouldn't be there without what we used to call the EEC or the EU or whatever, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, or the cross-border initiative, yeah.
Yeah, so we accept that. We accept the old mobile phone there now, and there's probably, antennas all around these hills here, like, that gives us that technology and that freedom to surf the internet or whatever you want to, the information highway, like, so we accept loads of it. It's when we start saying it's their fault or it's them, it's not.
Do you
me.
think that they or them are a committee, like a load of people sitting around?
The Illuminati or something like that? No, I don't. We elect people to take responsibility, and having responsibility is a big thing.
But the conspiracy theorists everywhere would tell you that you're only electing people that they're putting in front of you. Like, it goes that deeper, that the people that you think you're electing, that's the start of the puppetry.
I don't agree with that, and that's all right. I used to hate conspiracy theorists. I absolutely love them now. I think it's savage that there are people who believe that the Americans didn't put people on the moon,
Yeah, that's a huge one. There's people that have written books that prove they haven't put people on the moon.
No, they didn't prove it because they weren't there to prove it. It was just a theory, like, A lot of science is just theory, like, it's not actually proven. It's...
So you're saying there's something's just going to be unprovable?
You can make up any old theory you want, like, you know what I mean? And to say, oh, well, they're putting their people out there. I was one of those people. I was elected as a Dublin City Councillor before, and nobody kind of put me there. I actually did get elected for a party and spent 5 years on the council, where I realised the responsibility of that is huge. You can say that's them, or is it us? And I think it's us. I think we agree. We get comfortable about things. We sit into things and we just let things happen. And it has always kind of been like that. You know what I mean? And there's always been innovators and there's always been movers and shifters who want to make things and who want to, create things. And I was very, very interested recently in the technology that's going on with electronics, like, you know what I mean? And it's gone into supersonic, the stuff that we seen on Star Trek, they've even surpassed that now, like, you know what I mean? The stuff that we thought was sci-fi back in the 80s, like, it's...
I read a book recently, and there's a massive award for the first self-propelled thesis to walk over a 3D printer.
So explain that. I don't get that one.
A self-aware thesis to actually walk over a 3D printer and prove itself. Or a mechanical thing has to walk over a 3D printer and prove itself. That's where technology's gone. A self-aware thing has to walk out of the machine.
To print itself.
Yeah. So it not only print itself, it has to prove itself.
Yeah, and be aware, yeah.
And be aware.
There's an award for this, yeah. There's thousands of people trying to do it.
Because I'd seen this thing, it was like kinetic blocks programmed to be aware of what's around them. So see this table in front of us. So it's a solid shape. So we can imagine a table made out of hundreds of little bits, and they were all kind of independent.
Yeah, like nanotechnology.
Yeah, but not even that small, like the size of a Rubik's Cube. But they all worked together. And if I put my cup on the table would move to hold the cup.
All right, lovely. Yeah.
So I seen this the other day and I was going, I don't know if this is real. I don't know if this is fake. I don't know if this is AI. I don't know if somebody made it up. It could be either of those or any of those.
I was talking to my mate. He lives and works in California, right? And he was really lucky to get a job to be one of the passengers on a self-drive car. So that I had spoken to him about it 5 years ago, right? So we had another conversation and he was like, Sparky, the technology that has happened in 5 years. He said 5 years ago we had a driver, in inverted commas, that would sit in the car, and if the technology failed, the driver could take over. And he said, the technology is now far better than any driver. So he said, I get into a car now to test it. He said, I can get into the back seat, the front seat. The seats don't have to be facing forward. I said to him, is this all AI? And he goes, oh no, it's far more advanced than AI. I find that fascinating, and I find it amazing as well. You know, I think that we've come this far.
We think we're the big I am. We actually think where we're going is the place to go. And it's that way, and it's into the future, and it's fucking deadly. But there was this scan done of one of the pyramids, let's say the pyramid in Giza. And they found with the scan that there was a new room that they hadn't never looked at. Yeah?
All right, they found something new in the pyramid.
They use the technology now to look back at technology that was created whenever the fuck, thousands, hundreds of thousands of years ago, to go, how the fuck did they do that? And we're only getting to even look at it now.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course.
So it kind of it turns on its head the idea that where we're going is the place to go with all the technology. There is an argument, and I think the argument was being made, that the technology has been there, is there, was always there, will always be there.
Yeah, I get that.
That the arrow of time, that the arrow of invention, that the arrow of creativity, we think is that way, it's forward.
But I was coming up there in the car, right, and I was listening to classical music. They were saying that this guy had produced, back in, hundreds of years ago, this guy hadn't finished a certain symphony, right? He hadn't finished it. He had died before it was finished. So they put that information into AI and asked it to finish the symphony, and it did.
Yeah, it's not where the strike, where the screenwriters are on strike, because they don't want AI taking over their business. That's all that's about.
Like, because I was listening to a conversation on another podcast, and they were saying, well, you're not going to get AI to take over comedy.
There's nuances. It's subjective. Rather than it being synthetically generated, it's more natural.
Why did the chicken cross the road?
Ladies and gentlemen, Stephen Hawkins just rolled into the room there. Yeah, I think if anybody who says you'll never get this to do that will end up eating their words. But the point I was trying to make was, we think that the technology is ahead of us. There is an argument to say it's always been here. It's around us. I was interested in why you wanted to be on this podcast, why you listened to it, why you were, because you said to me a couple of weeks ago, I'd love to come on and just have a chat and talk about the stuff that I think about all the time.
Yeah.
And I think that they're part of the conversations that you have with me, that you have with yourself, that you read in books, that we don't get to fully explore, that we just do the hi there, hello, I remember this, what you think about that level of stuff.
Why I like your program is that you're of a certain age, that you'll give each other time to talk. Like, you listen to any of the young ones, anybody younger than 30 years of age, you just can't listen to them because they're butting in on top of each other. They have a new subject 30 seconds into the one that they're talking about. No, this is a lovely pace for me. I can't listen to that a bit more. I used to listen to a lot of Joe Rogan, Jordan Peterson. I used to listen to, bro, I can't abide where he's at now, where he's trying to teach. I used to like the Weinsteins. They're just, everybody has something to say. It's just, this is a lovely format to say it. I think there's a different way of living, rather than all the technology, rather than all the phones, rather than all the TV, rather than all the drama. And up here, it gives you space for that, to just search for that, or look for it, or cook for it, or go pick mushrooms and talk to it. Go over to St. Bridget's well and wash your face in it. Yeah. I think there's a different way of life. And I'm not about preaching about it, but I'm actually about doing it. If I need to go walking in the rain, I go walking in the rain. If you go walking in the rain in Dublin, people say, there's something wrong with that fella. You can walk the hills, traipse the hills in lashing and wind, and it's just beautiful. It's a spiritual feeling I get every time I walk outside the door. Don't you get it too?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
100%. I moved here in January, and I was quiet and lonely, and I was turning on radios and turning on TVs and anything to avoid that space where the quiet is. Then I got really, really lonely and sad, and I lay in my hammock for a couple of weeks. And then in behind that, I found that spiritual thing that you were talking about. it's kind of like a welcome or a solitude.
Like you're actually part of the scenery.
Yeah.
Now. Yeah.
I was up here when I was up here in my 20s. I remember meeting this guy, you know, and he was from the town. He was from Dundalk, you know. I was from the city, and he had recently met a girl, and they were having a baby, and they moved into a really, really rural place in this area, right? I went over to the house that they were staying in, and it was quiet. It was so quiet. I was just like, how are you going to survive out here, like, you know? And so after maybe a year, I met him, and I said to him, how are you getting on out there? And he said, I absolutely love it. And I said, what's it like? And he goes, I love having conversations with my neighbours. And he said, there's a lot of wisdom in rural places, right? And I was like, what is he talking about, right? No, but I do remember the conversation, and I hung on to the conversation. I hung on to what he spoke about. And listening to you, that's what he's talking about. He's talking about there is wisdom in the quiet spaces. You know, there's wisdom in the rivers and the holy wells and in the rain and walking in the rain and stuff like that.
I believe that if you're quiet enough, you can hear the countryside talking. I also believe that if you're quiet enough for long enough, you can heal, feel, and you can actually talk to hills. Our hills are probably the oldest hills in the world, and you can walk them and you can see them, and they look depressed because they're all rounded by years, thousands of years of wind and rain lashing up against them, and they only want to tell a story. I feel it.
You taught me that about the trees.
Yeah,
the trees just want to show off and say hello.
Yeah,
and just
look
go,
at me,
look
hello.
at me.
Yeah.
And
but trees talk to each other, don't they?
They do, yeah.
Well, they talk. Okay, let's open that door. Yeah, well, trees talk to each other.
Well, they communicate with each other. Sorry.
Yeah. So let's go in there. I've sat, laid in my hammock, walked, and listened to trees. Now, if you say that in a world where it's just technology, you sound like a fucking nutjob.
Hippie.
But if you say that, or if you feel that, or you discuss that in a place that isn't pointing towards technology, that is more expansive and that's listening to itself and that is not bogged down with ego and image, listening and talking to the trees and the rocks and the rivers and the rain and the wind is the thing.
And it does exist. It's bilateral communication.
Yeah, it's not one way.
There's a guy who does this TikTok called "This is Dublin," right? And there's a fellow walking down the street with a chair in his head because it's lashing rain up. And this fellow said, look at this head case, you know? And I'm thinking, he's not really a head case. He's covering his head from the rain. He's walking home. There's a guy on YouTube called Martin Doolan, I think his name, or Durlan or something like that. He is Dutch and he's living up in Italian Alps. And he has bought 2 little stone houses and he's refurbishing them in his style. So I started watching him during COVID. And every Sunday he throws out a video, and he has a great pair of hands. He never rushes anything. He never goes, I have to have the roof on the house this weekend. So the thing was, yesterday he was the wind came up, and I thought he was going to take the tent down. You know, I thought because the wind came up, and he stood there and he was saying, I love listening to the wind. I love this weather, you know, because it runs through the tree. And he was kind of nearly talking the way you were talking about the weather. Whereas to me, it's windy out means you've got to be indoors. Or if it's raining out, you've got to be indoors. Or if it's too sunny out, you've got to be indoors. Up here, that's not the case. And then even using the language of getting caught out. I remember one time out hill walking on my own, and I got, in inverted commas, caught out in the rain, right? And I wasn't expecting it to rain. I was coming down off the side of Black Hill under Mullacleavon, and I was coming down the track, and I was safe. You know, I knew where, you know, it was absolutely teamed down, like, you know, absolutely just like soaked to the bone. I remember a couple of thoughts in my head. One was, I had a full change of clothes in the car, and I was thinking, yup, looking forward to getting into them and getting out, into the warm car and stuff like that. But there was a point in it when I was walking where I was absolutely happy.
They're called great days. If you do a mountain leadership thing, right, you get a book and you're supposed to write down what mountains you've done, what time you've done her in, and then you're supposed to have 10 great days. And the 10 great days are supposed to be days where you're out in mad adverse weather. They're called great days, yeah.
And you just let go into
Yeah,
it.
you just get into it. You let the wind bring you wherever it is. You smell what's on the wind. You let the
there's
rain
no-
lash off your face.
There's no protective interface like, oh, I had the proper jacket or I had the proper technology to buffer between me and nature. It's an embrace. And as you said, it's a two-way chat. At some point when I'm up in those hills, it doesn't matter where I am, what the weather is, how long I've been out or where I'm going. I'm just in the hills. And the hills are in me.
Yeah, and what I want to do is open myself up a bit more, because around here is ancient, like prehistoric. Like this is where the Cooley Mountains, where they fought. Dublin's ancient, but it's been built up on. I'm sure if you can walk, there's a hill over across the way, and they still reckon that it has a forest that's been there 3,000 years, like pre-Ice Age. So that's ancient over there, and it's called Horn Hill. And they were saying because of chasing foxes. But I'd love to think it was like some fella stood up there in the start of a battle and just went,
I have a horn.
yeah, go on, boys, let's have it. Yeah.
None of us have clothes, but I have a horn.
Yeah. Feel that wind on your butt. Charge!
Is that a saber-tooth tiger? Are you happy to see me?
And Temple Town, guys, look, it was hard to imagine that, like the first Knights Templar hostel on this peninsula. You do a lot of reading up here. You read a lot of books, don't you?
COVID killed me reading. You know, I couldn't.
Really?
Yeah, I used to read a lot. When it happened to me, it threw me, like, you know. But no, I do reading in college. This year now, I'm into the library and I'm exploring, you know, a bit more. Like, this is my last year in college now.
And what is the actual name of the course you're doing?
Youth and Community Studies.
And how are you going to Australia on that? You jabby bastard.
So yeah, I'm going. We had to do a couple of placements over the year. So the first placement I did was in the job that I work in now, and I did a youth placement there, and I had to take on a project during that time. It was 7 weeks, or I think it was 14 weeks maybe, and I had to take on a piece of work, and I had to write that up, and it was about young women accessing youth services. In youth services, a lot of youth work is with young men, and always has been, you know, since became, you know, the bishop, Archbishop McQuaid. There was an awful lot of young men hanging around after work with nothing to do, and that's how they started running youth boys clubs and stuff like that. Like, so I was just looking at that, and then I was on placement in a community placement in Bluebell. I had to do another youth placement, and I was thinking of doing it in the prisons. I was interested in prison work, and that didn't happen. And then I heard of two young women from Ballymun had went to Alice Springs, and I just, you know, when you're on Facebook and they're saying, you know, goodbye to Mary and Jane, they're gone off to, you know, and I was thinking, they're in college and they're going to Alice Springs. It was like, I wanted a new experience, so I had a choice of doing a placement in Ireland. But I have a lot of experience working with young people in Ireland, so they were saying, why not do one abroad? And the places were Finland, Estonia, New York, or Australia. And I just have been leaning into the whole Indigenous Australian thing, you know, recently. It kind of, when I started listening to the other runners and that kind of stuff, I just kind of thought I'd love to just listen to those people, like, you know what I mean, and listen to their story. So I said, right, I'll go for that. Somebody said that they would mind the house and mind the dogs. I went, happy days. The credit union said, yeah. You know, I remember being on a plane one time going into Spain, you know, and half the plane was like middle class and half it was like working class. And when the plane landed, there was a big cheer. You know that cheer thing you do? This woman goes, 3 cheers for the pilot. And this one goes, fuck the pilot, 3 cheers for the credit union. So
Santa Ponca, here we come.
So the credit union said, yeah. I just said, right, happy days. The visa happened. I booked the flights. You know, me and Dave were talking on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, and we were just saying about buy the ticket, just go for it. And I didn't have, I think I was a bit down on myself a little bit because I was thinking, is this it? Like, you know what I mean? Is this all, you know, is this all it's going to be? Like, you know what I mean? And then when you open up to it.
Is this as good as it gets?
Is this as good as it gets? And then, but opening those doors, leaning into those things happen, like, you know what I mean? And it's when you're open to new experiences. Like, somebody was asking me this morning, are you nervous about going to Alice Springs? Not at all.
I think you are open to other people having great experiences. You know, Stano went to Australia, Mancon went to Australia.
So I was listening to all them, this year I was listening to all them.
And then I think you allowed yourself to go, that could be me, couldn't it?
I'm on a different wavelength at the minute. I'm on a different frequency. You was talking about talking to trees, right? If you'd have said that to me 5 years ago, I'd have been sitting here going, these are off their fucking banana. But
Hold on for a second. I'd say I have about 10 books over there that prove that trees talk to themselves.
come here. But this is what I'm saying now is that I can lean into that. You know, people were talking to me about the little people, about the she, like the people who live under the rocks and stuff like that. And I was thinking, that's all madness, right? But now I can go, no.
So you were saying a few minutes ago that Dublin is ancient as well, and it is.
It is. The whole world is ancient,
and it is, but it's concreted over, and the connections or the mycelium is disrupted. And what I mean by that is, when I go into a field up here that has been ploughed, I know it's being ploughed because there's no message or lesson in there. And when I go up into the hills where the mycelium is intact and it hasn't been ploughed and it's that natural land, there's tons of lessons for me. There's tons of learning. There's tons of conversations.
There's tons of growth, tons of beauty.
But the Phoenix Park hasn't been ploughed.
What a privilege and to have that in the city. Get into the Phoenix Park.
Yeah.
And I know the 420 cannabis heads, that's where they have that big meet, is in the Phoenix Park. And they sit in the grass and they bleed and they listen to the grass talking.
Well, there's a great thing to be done in Ayrton, just taking your shoes and socks off and just walking in the grass. That's holistically medicinal. Everybody knows that for thousands of years. It's called Ayrton yourself. I
see people doing it on the beach as well. You know what I mean? Yeah. Walking down. And I find when I get into the sea, it's a great leveler for me, like, you know.
I picked mushrooms up here from my ma in the side of a hill that wasn't ploughed. So I gave them to me ma. And the last week or so, she's been getting into the sea and allowing that to wash over and releasing whatever she has to release in the sea. So she done 3 grams of mushrooms last night and it blew her heart wide open. And she was talking to me about it and explaining it and saying the conversations she had with herself and with God or nature or whatever the fuck it is. Yeah. So I said to her, there's a place where you're going to get to and the mushrooms are going to say, this is always here. And if it's always here, why do you need us? So at a certain point, you don't need... At a certain point, it's there.
Ram Dass says the same thing. He says, once you get the message, there's no point in carrying the brick anymore. It's like banging on the door with meditation. You bang on the door, bang on the door, and you're meditating for a few years. And then one day it just clicks. You know what the meditation is about, and you know how good it is for you. But there's no need to keep banging the door.
So there's a mate of myself and Dean's who took acid in his 20s, you know, and he was at a festival or something like that, and he had a bit of a moment, you know, panic attack or something. Probably, I'm probably not telling the story right, but I know he walked away and he sat under a tree, and he got the message under the tree, but he never went back to acid, to LSD, because he got the message. You know what I mean?
The reason I'm saying that is because you're going to a place called Uluru, that area where those ancient conversations, that ancient wisdom is happening.
I'd say you'd be able to hear it at night time.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. You're going to be able to hear that conversation, that wisdom, that eternal technology where you are, if you're open to it. And I think that's where you're going. I think you are open to it. I think that this is the point and place that you are in. Now, I don't know if you know that or if you feel that, but that's what I see.
It's more about the people and to listen to the wisdom of the people. And that's young people as well, like, you know what I mean? Because, you know, Stephen was saying there about listening to podcasts and people of being a certain age and that. Like, I work with young people, so I listen to young people all the time. And I think there's great wisdom in youth and, you know, there's great wisdom in everybody. But it's been open to hearing it, like, you know what I mean? And sometimes it can be very difficult to get to hear amongst all the noise, you know what I mean? But like, I loved the punk movement. I loved the kind of, you know, there was at the time in music, there was like Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and they were playing 20-minute organ solos or something like that. Like, you know, and people were, you know, were getting into it. And then next thing, some fella just picked up a guitar with 3 chords and went, ah! And I loved that. I'm going out there to listen and to learn. I'm going over to a centre to a youth centre in Alice Springs. I'm going to be a student there for 6 weeks, and hopefully I'll go out bush as well, like, you know what I mean? And and experience that. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
I can just see you smiling there.
Yeah, I'm so looking forward to it. Like I'm a very disorganized person, so people would have had tickets booked months ago and all this kind of stuff. I don't. Like, I booked me ticket from Sydney to Alice Springs before I come up here today, you know.
Is there a return trip? Are you going to stay?
Could I end up going back out and living in Australia? Absolutely. You know, people have changed their lives and done completely different things out of circumstances, like, you know what I mean? Because so anything is possible. What's important to me now is to love this moment in the present, is to be in this moment in the present and enjoying this moment, you know, and taking look, I'm looking out the window here, I'm on Magic Hill, I'm looking at the lights in Dundalk, you know, turning on, and I'm really enjoying this moment, like, you know what I mean? I'm bringing with me a little sound card, and I'm going to bring that with me, and then hopefully do some podcasting out.
All right, just you and whoever.
Me and whoever, and then send them back. I was just thinking there.
A fresh batch on the road. Stephen Magee. Where'd you grow up?
York Street. Just off Stephen's Green. Spent my life in Stephen's Green. Went to school in Sing Street. Since I could walk till about 15 or 16, I lived in York Street. Played football, ran amok like you did. Was more out of school than I was in school. Yeah, lived in Phoenix Park and Stephen's Green.
Who's in the family?
Yeah, my mum, my dad. I have a brother and 2 sisters. They're still alive. My ma's still living in Kevin Street. The dad's still living in Kevin Street. A love story beginning in the flats. My dad's from Oliver Bond and my ma's from Mercer House. And we've lived in flats all our lives.
And when you left at 15, you left York Street, where did you go to then?
I moved into Fatima Mansions.
Up to Fatima, did you?
Yeah,
wow.
we're a girl. Me and her were. She was 16 or 17 and I was 15. I had twins when I was 15. Yeah, so we had our own little flat. So I'm used to doing up little places.
You're getting animated there and you have a smile and you're a little bit blushy. I find your shyness is very endearing. Unlike
yous, I don't have that recall from memory. So when I say something about Fatima Mansions, it's the first time I'm visiting in my head in 30, 40 years. And it's making me smile.
And what other memories do you have from growing up around there?
Oh, a sense of community. Oh, yeah, really. Like, we were on football teams. We all hung around together. Hundreds of young fellas hanging around together. And then, fucking the same as Ballymun or Poppentry, the drugs came in. The lads just start dying off bit by bit, the older generation especially. So we were in a non-employable area that was actually unlisted. Like, so you could go anywhere for a job in the country. They'd say, where are you from? And you put down your name as being from York Street and you just go, all right, good luck, that's it. There was a few of those places in Dublin. I'm sure there was in the north side. Fatima Mansions would have been one as well. York Street was definitely one. I was getting into an awful lot of trouble as a young fella, and then I met a priest. The priest came up to me and said, look, there's a bit more to life. Do you want to do a course? This was Father Charlie Howie out of Fleur Street. And I said, yeah, I'll try it. I'll do something different. So I went on this self-awareness course when I was 16 or 17. And in that self-awareness course, we went on this team building holiday. So it was all outdoor activities. Rock climbing, canoeing, hill walking, archery, all that sort of stuff. So did the course. At the end of the course, your man says, what would you like to do? I said, I'd like to do that job. So they sent me off to college to learn outdoor pursuits in Tiglin. And I was teaching outdoor pursuits for about 15 years. Yeah, rock climbing, hill walking, surfing.
Yeah. Where did you do that? Which centres did you work in?
Delphi Adventure Centre. Did a bit in Tiglin. Did a bit in Achill Island. Achill Island was beautiful. Did a bit all over the country. It was a real hippie way to live without being a hippie, because you could travel, you could hitchhike from centre to centre to centre, and you'd rock up anywhere, and they say you just want a hand for the summer. You'd even work for nothing just to be doing the activities and getting fed and room and board. Yeah.
So I know a couple of people who did that course to Tiglin.
Yeah, National Adventure Centre.
And then I remember being up there. It's a recovery centre now, but and there was an Anoga hostel next door there, wasn't there?
That's right. Yeah,
we used to stay up there. Yeah.
So I'm wondering, did we ever meet you? Because we would have
say we did,
brought gangs of kids, probably not to the Delphi Centre, but to places like in Kong and all over the country.
Yeah,
adventure centres.
Yeah.
We would have latched on to people like you who had the skills. Okay, we're doing rock climbing, we're doing canoeing. We done the canoeing course. We done all the courses as well, but from kind of a youth worker perspective. But we would have admired and hunted down people like you who had your level of skill and qualification.
Yeah, but it wasn't skill and qualification. It was wildness, because we came from a non-employable area. Like, I didn't think of it as work. Do you know what I mean? I thought, like, you do this thing, you get paid for it. It was like, it was more of a lifestyle than nothing else. I never considered it work. The best groups we used to have, and I used to get them all the time, were the handicap groups. They were brilliant. Yeah. You coming out at the end of the day covered in snots and Down syndrome tears. It was gorgeous.
Yeah. Dean was saying about Kong. There was a place there called St. Petersburg. We went down there a couple of times, but we were learning to be canoe leaders. There was one trip one day was through a number of lakes onto a river. In this particular river was 2 pieces of rock that were parallel, and in the middle of it was this huge gushing
like a drop.
No, yeah, it was a drop, but it was a flow, right? Yeah. And the guy who was teaching us told us to wait at the bend, right? So I rocked up, I waited at the bend, but then one of our mates, right, came past and he couldn't really stop, and I was saying, "We're the way here, bro," you know. And he said, and he just kept going. And the last I seen of him was he went through the middle of this yoke, you know?
Yeah.
When we got to him, we had to get down the Safeway. There was like something, and there was
like a weir or a salmon.
There was a weir at the side of it, yeah. So we went down there, and the guy who was teaching us was white. Like he was, like when we got there, and he was a real chilled out guy, but he started roaring, and we were like really taken aback, and he lost the head with us, you know, and we were, you know, you're kind of upset that we'd upset this guy, you know. So then when we went back to the place and we had our showers and we had our bit of grub, he came over and he said, "Look, guys, I have to apologise, you know, for the way and we were like, okay. You know, and I said, "Why did you lose the head so much?" And he said, "I went through that gap before, right through the middle of that, and I broke both my thumbs." Ugh. And he said, "I nearly drowned." And he said, "Nobody has ever canoed through that successfully.
On purpose."
Nobody
this
had ever.
Wasn't even on purpose. Your man just drifted.
Your man just drifted through, and he was out the other side. And I always remember when we got around, I was expecting him to be in a heap on the other side, but it was so dangerous. But he had miraculously got through it, like, you know. They were deadly times, and the thing is, you're right. It was about being in nature. You know what I mean?
But I was doing that for about 10 years, every day of the week.
Deadly. There's another guy when I worked in Kilbarrack. I met this young fella, and he was about 16 or 17, and he moved to Kong. He moved down to the Ackle and all. You'd say you came across this guy, but he lived in a caddy van that he had made into a gaff himself. So he had put in a couple of IKEA boxes, and he put a bed on top of that, and he had a curtain hanging up.
Made it comfortable, yeah.
And he made it comfortable, and he lived in that while he was doing what you were saying, like going around all the different centres. And he worked in Killary, he worked in Ackle, he worked in Petersburg, and he worked in the Cavan Centre at one stage, you know. And you know, you're right. You're saying it's like living like a hippie without being a hippie. You know, you have, and some nights the centre would put you up. You know, you'd be in the centre. And
some nights they wouldn't. You'd be sleeping in the caddy with your man.
In the caddy, there you go. Yeah. And I remember coming across him one time in the Scout Centre in Lockdown. You know, it was just daily. You know, you just meet the same people who were doing the
and who like being out in the weather and like feeling it. And that's why I was telling you at the start, those days that had adverse weather, they're called great days.
Great days,
but they're great days everywhere.
So I remember we were down in Ackle, right? And I had a camper van. I had this little camper van, and I was at the Boyne. I was out in the Fairy House Market, and I bought this siren, and you connected it up to the battery, and the siren was underneath the bonnet, like, you know what I mean? And you had 5 buttons on it. So one would be woo woo woo, one would be bah, 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 bah. That was just 5 different noises coming out, right? So this guy called Baz, you probably knew Baz, right? He had an ambulance. That was his camper van. And when you went into the ambulance, right, this is the truth of God, right, he had a gas bottle cooker, you know, like what your ma would have had in the gaff in the flats, and it was bungee cord. He had a bungee cord around it in the back of the van. He had a normal bed, and that was had brackets on it, and it was just kind of pushed.
I knew 2 lads had hearses, converted hearses.
Yeah, well, this was an ambulance, right? So we were sitting in the camper van, right, in my camper van, and the wind was blowing. Kevin was my mate. We kept pressing the siren on the yoke, right? But your man Baz's girlfriend kept getting out of the ambulance and looking up and looking around and all that kind of stuff, right? And we were falling around laughing. And later on, she said, something went wrong. You know, when the wind was blowing, the ambulance is but it wasn't. It was there soaring, like, you know.
The last time I was on Ackle, I fell out with a dressing table.
Oh yeah. We had a house during COVID. We were there with a couple of lads. We went surfing and all that type of stuff. But we had taken some of nature's gifts, some mushrooms, and there was a dresser that was in the room. It was a real old house, a little cottage on Ackle, and there was a dresser that Stephen developed a relationship with.
We had a fall now.
The dresser was talking to him, going, "Yeah, what are you doing?
What do you think you're doing here?"
What did you get up to after the adventure stuff?
Oh, I met another girl. You see a picture of my son on the wall, and we had him, Fionn, and I was getting a bit too old for the outdoor activities. Plus, I was getting a bit of pain because I'd broken a lot of bones, and I was always near water, so it was arthritic. So I wanted to learn to do something new. I think about 31 or 32, I decided to go to college to learn about trees. Just to, I don't know, a mad principle, thinking that if I knew about trees, I could save the planet and from its own fucking nonsense, But it was more in an industrial college. I went to Ballyhaise, where they teach you about the commercial product of timber rather than, I was more into it for, not aesthetics, but learning more about what trees can give you and how healthy they are. But so I had that and I had the climbing, so I combined the two and became a tree surgeon, and I was cutting timber for the ESB for 12 years, 12, 15 years. It was a great job. It was real outdoorsy again, because you're up in trees that nobody's ever been in, chainsaw hanging off your arse, you've a rope hanging off the front of you, and you're just loving life.
When did the cooking come in then?
Well, I've always cooked. I always looked at my ma cooking. Yeah, I've always cooked. No, I like cooking. It's real therapy for my brain. You know, if I'm cooking a meal, say, like, not today's meal, I made that 2 days ago, but if I was cooking a meal, if I knew you were coming up, say, for a weekend, I would have a recipe in my head or an idea in my head that I would start 2 or 3 days before, just to get into it. It's my own gift to myself.
Yeah.
But it's also a gift that you're giving to us, because you made like a venison dish and there's berries and nuts and all in it.
But it's a pure fucking Halloween dish. This is what I'm giving you. I'm giving you Colcannon. Like, I'm going to put wherever it is on a bed of Colcannon. Right now, it's all pure Irish food. The deer you're eating was probably walking the Wicklow Mountains 2 weeks ago. It was shot by. It's an organic animal. It has fed on heather and berries and grass and probably bark for 15 years, and now we're going to eat it. And I'm doing it in a berry sauce. Yeah, with nuts.
And you're using the bay leaves that you probably clipped off the tree outside.
Yeah, they've gone in, Anything that we can grow around here that's edible, we're always eating. The hedgerows are full of blackberries. The forest is full of raspberries, blueberries, the loganberries, full of trees, full of mushrooms. This place is teeming with food. Teeming with it, yeah.
So how did you justify cutting down the trees?
Me?
Yeah.
Money. It was a job. It was a great job because you got to go to, say, I went all over the country, especially all over West Cork and West Kerry. I would follow power lines, and that's basically what I did. Power lines. But at one stage, we were putting in a new power line across Killarney National Reserve Forest. And we went in one day, and I had to kill a holly tree. And the holly tree, I'd say, was standing there for about 700 years. At least it was fucking magnificent. You walk in through a forest, on a rainy day, you're surrounded by fast-growing deciduous trees, so like sycamores, ash, just conifers as well, just all there. But in the middle of it was this white holly tree. It was like a gateway to heaven. It was like a different spirit, and I had to kill it in order for progress. And ever since that, my heart went over. I lost something. I love holly trees. I find them real mischievous. They're like, if you're up and down trees like for 10, 12 years, you know what I'm talking about. They're lovely trees. They're lovely comforting trees, but they're real old and they're real slow grown, and they're magnificent in winter because they're green and the berries and everything, and their bark is pure white. And when the sun hits them, it's just like a vision. The pagans used to take them indoors to keep bad spirits away, yeah, and they used to have a stick of it over the door of the house, keep bad spirits away.
You made a bow.
I'm still in the process of making a bow, out of a piece of yew timber, yeah. I'm whittling it. I'm not actually using any big processes. So when I get the yew on, I just take out a knife and whittle down part of the yew tree. Yeah.
And why the yew?
Well, it's real strong timber. I got it for nothing. And the yew tree is supposed to be a gateway to spirit houses. So you'll see a yew tree in every church and every graveyard. There's going to be a yew tree. The thing that's highly poisonous, but it's supposed to be The reason it's in every graveyard, especially famine graveyards, is it's supposed to feather away the spirits of the innocents quickly. Yeah.
I think I'm in love with you, Steve.
Dean, I love you too. Not that way,
telling
no.
you. Well, whatever way it is, it's definitely love, and I'm in awe of the places and the steps that you've been that have shaped you to where you are.
Oh, yeah,
you know what I mean?
yeah, I'm
the
still in
knocks
the
and
process.
bumps and
Yeah.
scars and bruises, the books you've read, the tears you've cried, the food you've made.
Are we not all on the same journey? It's just we're taking different paths.
Yeah.
We're all going to the same place, I believe. We're all going to die. And whether you believe that's you're going off into the cosmos, we all have this last full stop. We're all doing that. But we're all taking a different journey to it, or a different roadway, different path.
We're going to the same place. We're just on different buses.
Yeah. 46A, 87.
27B.
Yeah.
The flight to Alice Springs.
Uluru. I'm mad jealous. So they have written history, although it's not written down in words. Every one of those pictures you will see on the
Is
wall.
their history? That's right.
Yeah, is their history.
There's an artist out there called Helicopter. These guys were coming in and trying to give him money to put these paintings and sell them in galleries, and he was like, "No, that's my history."
Yeah.
And they're also maps.
Yeah.
They're like topographical geography maps, but they're also maps of into the other world and back and so on.
Yeah.
And their communications. This is one of the things I wanted to say to Mancon, but I couldn't verbalize at the time. We tell stories here for the other worlds to listen to, and the other world has stories that we listen to. That's the way I'm feeling it now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That the stuff we do here is as useful and as wise and as informative and as beneficial to the other side as whatever happens there. You know what I mean? The Cucullins and the all of those ancient stories, all of those myths and legends. The sense I'm getting is, and that's why I'm excited for you to go to Australia and meet those people who are living there and listen to their stories and listen to what they have to say and bring what you have to say, because I think, Sparky, what you have to say, what you have to bring to them is fucking lovely.
Yeah, elder statesman of Dublin. Seriously, bring that over and own it and go, hold on, wait. I can tell you a story about Ballymun where there's like a tower of kids all hanging around together. They didn't have that. They didn't have tower blocks full of kids. Do you know what I mean? They were spread out and they all knew the area and they all knew everything else. In the tower blocks, you mightn't have known your neighbour. Do you know what I mean? That's a completely different experience the way you're going. Uluru. Imagine the indigenous people, that's sacred to them, that big rock.
What I think is mad is that white people want to go out and walk on it. You know, I don't get that. People were saying to me, "Are you going to do tourist stuff out there?" I am, and me arse going to do tourist stuff. Like that's not my. I've no interest in that anymore. When I was a kid, the one thing I wanted to see was the Eiffel Tower. You know. And when I got there, it just looked like the way it looked like in the
Meccano.
picture. You know, it just looked like, for me, wanting to go to Paris is about soaking up the culture. I have a good friend who's big into French culture. You know, he brought us down to this restaurant, and next thing, about 1,000 people came past us on rollerblades. We were like, "What is going on here?" Like, you know. The food was amazing, like, you know, and so that's what I think about Paris. It's not about the Champs-Elysees or Notre Dame or anything like that. I think of
more of a taste.
The culture, the taste, the people, the crack. You know, that's what it was the same in San Francisco. It was the first time I tasted Mexican food. And I always think of that. I just think it's more pleasing or something, like, you know what I mean? That you get to know people, you get to know the spirit of a place, or the vibe of a place, or the frequency, or whatever you want to call it. I like that, you know, and I like there's certain places in Ireland that when I go to, like Belfast has an amazing energy for me, like, you know what I mean? Galway as well, like, you know what I mean? And even though Dublin City, like, I went in to meet a mate of mine in Dublin the other day, you know, and the first thing he said to me when he got off the bus was, "I love this city." And he's right. It's all different. It's, you know, it's changing. It's constantly changing. I was standing at a bus stop waiting for him, and my experience of it was amazing. The flow of people, the different faces. There was tourists, there was locals, there was all kinds of, and it was just amazing, you know.
My dad said that to me the other day because we went into town for my sister's birthday and we were walking down Parnell Street. He was just like, I just love this now. The cultures, the different shades of people, the different accents, the different smells and so on. My dad spent some time in London and he was homeless there. And I remember having conversations with him about it. And I said, what was it like? He said it was hard. And, you know, I didn't like black people at the time, you know, because I was fighting against them for resources, like fucking...
Yeah, fighting for the next job. Yeah, nothing to do with the skin colour.
yeah, it wasn't. It just happened to be...
Yeah,
you know,
black fella.
poor Irish people and poor black people in London were bleeding on the shit end of the stick, like, you know. And I remember saying to him, "Are you racist?" And he was like, "I don't know." Before COVID, we got a chance to go to South Africa. Me, Stephen, and my brother Eric. What I tried to do there was just embrace the people, no matter what they were.
Yeah, that was an eye opener. Like, you see poverty in Dublin and you think, well, that's the end of it. That's fucking where the shit hits the fan. But then you go to South Africa and you see a lad living in a plastic bag as clothing. Yeah, no.
A fella, we were in Cape Town, we seen a fella using a jumper as shoes.
Yeah, and he was wearing one of the cheapest plastic flags you could get, yeah, as a pair of jocks and a vest. Yeah, no, that was a culture shock. Yeah, I'm still deciphering what went on in South Africa. I'm still trying to harness the feelings I have about it. But the one thing I do know is that the white man has had to raping the whole thing. We drove through forests that shouldn't even be there. We drove by mines. We drove by horrible stuff. I mean, industrialised. We drove through Swaziland. It was just like driving through a big pillar of black smoke. Everything was on fire and everything was manky. Yeah. And it was rape on an industrial scale. Yeah. It hadn't rained in 3 years. It made me feel sad. I felt sad for the country rather than the people of the country.
What did you think about the people?
I thought they were beautiful. I fell in love with every black woman I saw. I thought they were stunning. Absolutely beautiful. Every one of them. I've never seen a more beautiful race of people, I think. They all look strong. They all look healthy. They all smiled, Dean. That's the other thing I couldn't get my head around. They were all smiling. Yeah. Every one of them. Deeply religious, whatever religion they had. Yeah. I didn't like where the white people lived. We stayed in Mosul Bay, the place near to Jeffreys Bay, where we were going to go surfing. But every house in Mosul Bay, they had a steel door. They had a high parapet. So the parapet was about 16 feet off the ground. The top of that had razor blade wire that was electrified. This was their house. They made this themselves. That was electrified. They had a little tunnel to walk to their front door, which was another steel door with mesh on it. Their windows were barred up with barbed wire and bars, thick bars. So people couldn't get in. They were in the house before it got dark. I don't know how people live like that.
I remember when the Queen died, there was a speech went live of this South African leader of a left-wing group, and they would be more left than the ANC. He articulated why he wouldn't mourn the death of a queen who still wore the rubies that were stolen from South Africa on her head, you know. And with the way he explained it, you know, for us growing up as children, looking at fairy tale books and a king has a big crown on his head full of encrusted with rubies, you're not thinking of the politics about that people went and stole those artifacts and then wore them on their head as an act of triumphantism. It was an amazing speech, you know, and just that whole thing about, you know, monarchy and, you know, you're saying about that elitism and, you know, like, why would you want to live like that? Why would you want to live behind razor wire, electrified, you know, why would you feel...
In an armoury.
In an armoury. You're living in an armoury because there's people who are surrounding you who are absolutely shit poor, wearing plastic bags as clothes, like, you know what I mean? And then we're constantly told that communism or socialism doesn't work. I think that's not true. I think it does work. I think when you have a society of equals, like there's people who are called billionaires, right, who will never ever ever spend the money that they have accumulated in their lifetime. What's the point of it? would it not be fairer that everybody had the same wage and everybody survived fairly with food and accommodation? Is that not a better society? You know, is it not better that everybody is equal? Everybody has the same.
Some people are more equal
outcome.
than others.
I'm just thinking about a guy living. His jocks are a Tesco bag, right? And then those people who are probably minted, right? And then they're living in fear. Would it not just be better that everybody has the same? Everybody has the same, opportunity and outcome, and then you don't have to live behind an armory, you know?
Yeah, but ideally, right, so you have to do, right, is you have to go back and look at the history of South Africa and wonder why these people are locking themselves in behind the doors, because of the atrocities they commit and the ones that are still doing.
You know, and then there's, you know, there are groups who are coming in and taking back land. And I have to say, you know, yeah, when we see what's happening in Palestine, where people are just, bulldozing people's houses and saying, no, yeah, you used to live here, we live here now.
Yous don't exist.
Yeah.
Use Aboriginals, use Palestinians, use whatever.
And what's happening in South Africa is the opposite of that. Is where the indigenous people are saying, no, actually, this is our land. We're taking it back. Now, it's been taken back by force as well. Like, you know what I mean? But when you look at the history, you know, they didn't get out to South Africa. The white people didn't get out to South Africa and settle there to live amongst the palm trees. Or they went down to mine gold.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
And to get everybody else out of the way of progress, slaughter them all.
They brought down their
Slaughter them all.
brought down their technology and their what was the one that Gandhi was asked? Civilization. When Gandhi got to London, what do you think about the civilized world? He said, I think it's a good idea.
I've still to see it.
Yeah, it's a good concept. I've still to see it.
So where you're going, they had the rabbit-proof fence. And I only learned about this a few years ago. That this is how colonialism got its way. It was a frame of mind rather than nothing else. It was like, these are the rules. This is the rules of engagement. We're going to kill, and take everything we can, and we're going to rule this society. Some societies, they just walked into it, and the fear alone of them, they just capitulated.
That's what Cromwell did here. That is still happening now. That's happening in Israel. You know, they say, you know, they're still doing the exact same thing. You know, I mean, they've gone into Gaza today.
I'm not talking about hundreds or thousands of years ago.
No, I know.
Today,
yeah. But and you know, Damo has a great song called Colony, and if you listen to it, I mean, it should be played to every child in the world to understand history, like, you know, because our history is written in our songs. You know what I mean? And he wrote a great song that he initially started writing about his grandparents. His ma said to him one day, "Your granny thinks you have a song written about her," and he goes, "I don't." And he says, "Well, you better write one." So as he was
thinks
writing,
you have, so you better do it.
Write one. That's what happened. So then he started writing, and then he was thinking, well, if I write this about her, I'm going to have to write 3 more about me granddad. So he wrote them all into it. But then he realised they were all born under the colony, you know, under British rule. The song took hold of him then, and he started writing about colonization across the world, like, you know. And our struggle in Ireland is the same struggle as the Palestinians, it's the same struggle as the indigenous people of Australia, of, you know, America, South America. All those struggles are all against colonization, about what you're talking about, that they will just go in and just start slaughtering from the minute they get off the boats and just take over. This land is ours. And then even, you know, you're calling that rock, what was the rock you called it? Uluru, which was named Ayers Rock by somebody. And then you have the falls in Africa, which I'm sure have an indigenous name, which were then called Victoria Falls. You know, on O'Connell Street in Ireland was the main street in Ireland was Sackville Street. And I was reading a great thing on social media last year. This guy, this black African guy, was standing he was pictured beside a pond in a park in London, and he says that I've renamed this lake, and he gave it an indigenous name of Africa, like, you know, and he was saying, that's exactly what you've done in my country. So I'm going to do the same here. Like, I know a guy in Donegal who spray paints out the English names
On the road signs.
on the road signs, and people give out saying, "Oh, the tourists will get lost," and he's like, "People go to France and don't get lost. You know, the names are in French, in France, like, you know." So it's an agreement. That's, you know, what you're talking about is this thing is that the agreement was that the monarchy, the empire were more than others. They were better than others, and they could go and they could just take over swathes of land and countries and just call them whatever they wanted. And they weren't the only ones. Russia,
The Ottoman, loads of empires.
Belgium.
The Ottoman Empire, the Mongolian Empire.
yeah.
They all did it. The Belgians were the best though. They were the ones that hired out pirates. That's why half of Africa is Belgian colony. They didn't actually go to war themselves. They just sent over the pirates to wreck the gaff.
Part of Namibia, Swakopmund. They had the early test runs of the concentration camps that they used in the war in Germany. They tried them out there first.
Yeah, look, it's a horrific past, and it's still ongoing. It's still going on. I mean, down in Australia, they had the vote there a couple of weeks ago, and it was to give Indigenous people a voice. You know, it wasn't passed. You know,
Are you saying that's a white vote, is it? Or was it done in Parliament? Did everybody have to vote on this?
everybody had to vote on it, I think. But I think in Australia you have to vote. You know, it's against the law not to vote.
As you were saying that there's all that stuff, all that shit that's happening. There's also the great days.
Yeah, there is also the great days. Yeah. And I think if an awful lot more Irish people got up and just out into the, I'm not even saying Irish countryside, just get out into the wind or the rain and just let it lash on your face and realise that you're getting told a story that has probably been said 3,000 years ago and it's only for you to hear now. Even if it's a bit of rain that brings a tear to your eye or something that just catches in your throat. You just get out and experience it, feel it. I think Ireland has a lot more to give to people than it doesn't. Do you know what I mean? I think the three of us went up walking up the hill and wouldn't talk to each other. The three of us would have a fantastic day. There would no words would need to be said.
On that note,
Dean,
there's no more words need to be said.
Grummagat.
Stephen Magee.
Thanks, Steve.
No worries, brothers. Now time to eat.
Episode 18, the Fresh Batch Podcast. Sparky, go and enjoy. Go and share, go and listen. Bring back some lovely stories. Me and Sparky did say we were going to do a podcast on the 24th in the Access with a traveller and a countryman, but Sparky's heading off on an adventure, so
I bought the ticket.
he bought the ticket.
We'll do it in January or February.
So if you want to come along, me and Martin on the 24th of November, Traveller and a Countryman podcast, buy a ticket, €10.
Live in the Access.
Live in the Access. The guests are Sharon Ward, amazing traveller, woman, singer. Eileen Flynn, amazing traveller, senator.
Senator Eileen Flynn.
And young Hughie Motton, amazing global Big Brother superstar. It's going to be some crack. A couple of special guests as well. A couple of special music guests, 1 or 2 surprises. So get your ticket. Episode 18, the Fresh Batch Podcast.
Fresh, yeah?
Yup, Australia.
Here, fuck off, will you? Fresh, yeah?
A Traveller and a Countryman podcast. Live.
Live, the 24th November.
Access Theatre, Ballymun. This is our only live show this year. And we're going to fill the room in the Access with settled people, travelling people from all over the
So
place.
you're feeling good about it, Jess?
I'm very excited. We've got amazing guests.
If they come to our live show, they get to hear Eileen Flynn talking, is that right?
They get me, they get you, they get a special guest, they get Hughie Motton, Sharon Ward, €10 on the 24th of November.
So it should be a great night out in the Access 24th. Plenty of banter and plenty of chat and a bit of crack. I want to invite all the travellers onto this show to hear all the crack come from different angles, as a fellow would say.
It's a night of chat, song, the crack, couple of weeks before Christmas.
And best of all, in from the cold. For €10 you get a seat, you get light and you get heating. You get to listen to me and you talk. Here, there's no losers. It's all winners.
Tickets are selling fast.
Flying out.
Go to the Access Theatre, get your ticket. Traveller and a
Can you
Countryman.
buy a ticket at the door also? Yes.
They'll all be gone by then. So
But if people want to get them at the door, can they get them if there's no...
tickets will be gone. Anyone looking for tickets, get on to Martin Stokes.
You're spoiling it all, I'm telling you. You're just spoiling it completely. If you don't want to see the Countryman, tell me you want to see the Traveller. And again, if I'm not there, just start without me. How about that? I think it's going to be a good evening out. See you there.